It's finally here. 4.5 years after the first clump of earth was turned at the Shan site near the Novena station, the trains are ready to go. In just 4.5 years, we have taken a colossal step forward compared to those very early days when speed was typified by the horse and carriage. There's little to compare the rides then and now, but before we take the first ride on the MRT, let's take a look back at those times.
Singapore, 1820. One of the earliest forms of wheeled public transport in Singapore was the horse and carriage. Also called a hackney, this British import was a popular way of getting around in those days. Then, in 1880, the Japanese jinrickshaw was introduced into Singapore. This, though, was not horse-powered, but man-powered. During the Japanese occupation of Singapore, the trishaw was introduced. It was quite like the jinrickshaw, man-powered, but instead of having to run and pull with his own two legs, he could now pedal his passengers to their destinations. The first mechanically powered form of public transport was the steam tram. It started running in Singapore in 1867. The steam tram was not very successful and was later replaced by the electric tram in 1905. In its heyday, the trams used to carry as much as 11,000 passengers a day. Singapore's first bus system, which started in 1929, began with the trolley bus. Next, the motor bus was introduced. In those days, bus services were provided by the Singapore Traction Company and by some other privately owned companies. These days, there are 3 major bus companies in Singapore, each providing an efficient service with a fleet of modern buses. And if it isn't a bus you want, then there are 5 taxi companies, with a total of 10,551 taxis to serve you. But public transport in Singapore is set to take on a new shape with the mass rapid transit system, a step into the future.
From horse-drawn carriages to gleaming super-speed carriages driven by motors with a power of 3,000 horses. The trains for Phase 1 of the MRT were tested a few months ago, and when the entire system is completed, the total bill would have come to $5 billion and taken 15,000 workers to build. There will be 42 stations and 70 kilometers of tracks. A north-south line from Yishun to Marina Bay, an east-west line from Pasir Ris to Boon Lay, and a western branch between Yio Chu Kang and Jurong East. The idea of a rail transit system first began in the 1970s. Careful studies were made by international experts, and in May 1982, the Minister for Communications, Mr. Cheong, announced the government plans to go ahead with an MRT for Singapore. It's befitting, therefore, that the inauguration of this Phase 1 of the MRT is by the Second Deputy Prime Minister, who is now making his way down to the station platform. A smiling Mr. Cheong and Dr. Yeo Ning Hong being escorted by the chairman of the MRTC and the SMRT.
May I now invite the chairman of the Mass Rapid Transit Corporation, Mr. Michael Pham, to say a few words. Mr. Pham, please.
At the MRT inauguration and groundbreaking ceremony in October 1983, I said, with the firm support of the government and the people of Singapore, we shall move ahead purposefully to build a MRT system that is modern, efficient, and reliable. We shall strive to ensure that our system will be equal to the best in the world. I am very proud to be able to say today that we are well on course towards this objective. We now have a mass rapid transit railway system that sets new standards for others throughout the world. It is an achievement which will draw even more attention to Singapore as a center of excellence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pham. It is my pleasure now to invite our guest of honor, the Minister for Communications and Information and Second Minister for Defense Policy, Dr. Yeo Ning Hong, to address us. Dr. Yeo, please.
This morning's inauguration ceremony marks the beginning, not the completion, of the MRT system. Today, only 5 stations will be open. Greater challenges lie ahead of us, with 37 other stations and some 60 kilometers of tracks at different stages of construction. We look to continue cooperation from the public. I would ask Singaporeans to give the SMRT their full cooperation, to take all these teething problems in their stride, and to help make the MRT another symbol of the progress that we're making. Thank you.
Mr. Ong Teng Cheong proceeds to unveil the commemorative plaque. The symbolic handing over of the MRT system from the builders, the MRTC, to the operators, the SMRT. From chairman to chairman, the master control key is now handed over to the train driver, Hung Mao Sui. For the ministers, invited guests, and the people of Singapore, the first ride begins.
Well, here we are on the first MRT train, the first batch of passengers, all of us eagerly waiting to experience the thrill of the first ride. In just a few seconds, this train will begin its maiden journey, all the way from Toa Payoh to Yio Chu Kang. And I think we're just about to start, and yes, we're off. From the looks of it, all 6 carriages are full and the atmosphere is charged with excitement, not just for the 120,000 people who are undertaking today's journey, but also for Mr. Hun, the train operator. Now, he must be acutely conscious of the fact that he's the first train operator to undertake this journey. From where I am, driving a train doesn't look all that difficult. A press of the button and it's all systems go. But believe me, it's not all that easy. I can see Braddock Station. Now Agnes will be joining me in this train in just a minute. But before that, a little bit about the station itself from Agnes.
Hello and welcome to spanking new Braddock Station. Now 3 years ago, this was only a huge crater. 120,000 tons of earth had to be removed to make all this possible. Now the whole system is designed to save energy. Take these screen doors for example. When they're closed, they keep the cool air in the station and prevent it from escaping out into the tunnel. That will help MRT save its air conditioning bills by half. Now before the screen doors close and the train moves off, let's go join Ratna. Hi Ratna.
Hey, hi, come on and join us here on the ride.
What has it been like so far?
Great, I tell you, riding in this air-conditioned comfort. No worries that my makeup's going to run, no traffic lights to contend with and no congestion. Couldn't be better, really.
Well, what do you think the other passengers think?
I don't know, we have an interesting group of people here. The VIPs are here, those who built the system, they're all down here, and the commuters, of course. Why don't we find out from them? Is this your first MRT ride?
Oh, this is my first in my whole life.
How would you describe this ride?
Oh, it's very comfortable, and I feel, no air pollution. Usually when I go out in the buses, I used to have like a mask on my nose. Now I'm free with that.
I used to think the Montreal subway was one of the most beautiful, but I think this can be easily compared to that.
I'm surprised about the air condition, and actually the train's very nice. and it's a kind of a nice ride.
I feel very lucky because I'm a Singaporean. At least we got a chance to ride on MRT.
See the scenery, it's very nice. Air conditioned, very clean, very spacious and very nice.
I really feel like not going out the train or just sitting in, just to enjoy the ride.
Most couples would choose either the Botanic Gardens or the Chinese Gardens. Why do you choose the MRT?
Well, because it's very special. I mean, it's really
we want it to be special, and we want it to be the first couple to be on the MRT.
a special occasion.
Special.
You made it as the first couple. All the best, yeah?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was the most refreshing ride, and we're all very proud of this day.
As project manager in charge of the MRT, now that it's all completed, how do you feel?
Yeah, very wonderful, opening ceremony today. I'm very happy here, and also I'm very happy to say, congratulations to opening of the MRT.
Mr. Hong, you've been the prime mover of this project, sometimes against opposition. Now that it's all over, how do you feel?
Well, how do I feel? This is like a 20 years love affair, from conception to delivery. Now the baby is born. Well, to say that I'm happy and pleased is an understatement.
How would you describe the feeling then?
Well, I'd say very thrill and excitement.
As the minister in charge of the project, I'm sure you had to go through quite a lot. How do you feel now that it's all over?
Well, it's not all over yet. The bulk of it is yet to come.
Yeah.
We are only just starting, but it's fantastic. It's a very good project. We had a lot of cooperation from everybody. The project has gone extremely smoothly, and now we're able to provide Singaporeans with really an extremely modern transportation system.
We're in a tunnel 14 meters below ground and on our way to Bishan Station. Now, many of these tunnels were dug by what the engineers call shield machines. These machines are pretty special because they can dig away deep in the earth without disrupting traffic on the surface.
The shield was specially made to suit our ground conditions. As the tunnel face is dug, the earth is removed by conveyor belt and taken to the surface, maybe as much as 8 tons an hour. Even working round the clock, progress was a slow 4 meters a day. Because our soils are soft, compressed air had to be used. It prevented the face of the tunnel from collapsing. For many of our men, this was the first time they were working in compressed air. As the tunnel was cut, concrete slabs were laid to hold up the tunnel. Two-thirds of the mass rapid transit system runs above ground. The trains run on 2 tracks, while a third rail supplies the power. As a safety feature, 2 extra guardrails have been installed. In the unlikely event of the train derailing, the guardrails would prevent the train from toppling off the viaduct. The system is also a great energy saver. The propulsion equipment is the world's most economical in its use of energy. Normally, trains are propelled all the way to the next destination. But our engines accelerate, shut off, and coast to the next station. This way, less energy is used.
The MRT is going to affect not only the travel habits of commuters, but also their daily lives. Now, Shopee is out there with some residents for whom the comings and goings of these trains are going to be as much a part of their daily life as it's going to be for the commuters.
gleeful delight of children and probably the most spontaneous reaction to the trains. This is the generation that will grow up with the MRT. Their parents, though, will have to make the adjustments to their lifestyles as this new mode of transport enters their lives. So how do you feel, Mr. Ong, about this first train?
Just passed by. I believe it must be very exciting to have a first ride, and I think most of people are looking forward for a ride too.
The MRT station is just across the road from my house, and if it will be my first preference to take this new type of transport if I'm going out with my family. My children have been asking me where will they have the chance to have the ride on it. I said, today is the day.
The MRT will bring change to the lifestyles of families, and on an even larger scale, it has already brought change to our landscape. People have seen little of what's been going on behind these boards. But all over the island, MRT stations have been mushrooming from nothing. Tanjung Pagar Station, Ang Mo Kio and Bishan, each one having a character of its own, like the splash of colour that greets you at Toa Payoh Station. New sights and sounds now hit us, the whiz of the trains, the tracks that hover over our streets, and the MRT network spreading across the island. The trains, which from a distance look like toy trains, have woven in and out of our society. They speed us on to a new phase in urban transportation. The people, in turn, are now in the process of soaking up the change that is taking place all around them.
Yes, the MRT is going to change not just the physical landscape, but also the way people move around. 250,000 people live here in Ang Mo Kio, many of whom are expected to take the system. Since the trains will be carrying a large number of passengers every day, a lot of attention has been given to the location of the stations, as can be seen here.
At the junction of Avenues 3 and 8 is the hub of the estate, the town centre and the bus interchange, the focal point for public transport. Fed by 7 feeder services, as many as 25,000 people converge on this interchange during the peak morning hours to make connections with 16 trunk services covering all of Singapore.
The MRT station is located just across the road, and commuters can make use of this subway to get to the station. From there, it's a cool ride that will take them to their destinations in half the time.
As the train pulls into the station at Yio Chu Kang, it marks the end of the first ride. But it's only the beginning of many rides to come, because as of now, the MRT line between Toa Payoh and Yio Chu Kang is officially open and operational. From tomorrow, there'll be no more bands or colourful decorations to greet commuters here, because once the novelty of riding on the MRT wears off, it'll become part of the routine of those who'll be using it every day. Well, That's the end of the first ride, and it's taken Singapore into a new era of transportation. And like any new experience, today will be remembered as a very special day by those people who have worked hard to make the MRT a reality, and by those who've been here to be part of this historic first ride into the future.